أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very warm welcome to another interesting edition of our weekly advice assembly with Ndifuna Ukwazi. And of course today we will be focusing particularly on what is legal aid, who can secure legal representation, also legal aid functions. And in studio I have quite a group of people that will be able to assist us with all the questions that we have. I have Kayla Hazel from Ndifuna Ukwazi, also Charlotte Makua from Legal Aid, as well as Babalu Jiza, as well as Tulani Mgoinya. And they're all joining me in studio. Remember, our lines are open for you to be part of our conversation on 0786 10 11 12 or 021 699 1786. Now, just a reminder to the listener that an advice assembly is usually a weekly meeting of tenants, occupiers and activists that's hosted by Reclaim the City and Ndifuna Ukwazi. It is also a space to learn about eviction laws and the rights and responsibilities as tenants, and to stand in solidarity to prevent and resist unlawful evictions and unfair landlord practices. Social solidarity and sharing knowledge is even more essential now, especially in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and massive economic hardships facing the country. Now, during this weekly advice assembly, we will be focusing on topics such as what the current position is on evictions now that the state of disaster has come to an end, also tenants who cannot pay rent and what to do as both the landlord and the tenant, unlawful evictions and what to do if you are unlawfully evicted, and then also what are the responsibilities of bodies like the police, the court and the rental housing tribunal, where you can seek help if these institutions can't or won't help. Then of course also looking at early cancellations of leases as well as by the landlord or the tenant, and all of those things covered in the weekly advice assembly. Now, as mentioned, today we will particularly focus on what is legal aid, who can secure legal representation and legal aid functions. Now, in the last couple of weeks, we've been speaking a lot about the case of Megan, and we heard that Megan last week was undergoing constructive eviction, where her landlord cut off her water supply as well as her electricity. Now, later on, she came back home to find that her landlord changed the locks and she could not access her home. We also spoke about spoliation and how this could be used as a remedy to reclaim possessions of her home, and also who also discussed that while applying for a spoliation order, one would need legal representation, as this could get technical. Now, if someone can't afford a lawyer, what are the options? Can legal aid assist in such a case? Actually, what are the legal aid services, and also what qualifies you as part of the criteria if people are applying for these accesses, inshallah. So all of that we will be looking at, and you can be part of our conversation once again, 0786 10 11 12 or 021 699 1786. Now, maybe I'll start off with Kayla, maybe just to give the listeners an idea of where Megan is in terms of a case, but also the purpose of legal aid in this regard.
For sure. Thanks, Zainab. So we've invited Legal Aid to come be with us themselves today so that they can speak about the legal services that they offer, because they're one of the biggest pro bono legal services in the country. And obviously we understand when we're looking at somebody like Megan and many people in her situation, securing a private lawyer is just too expensive. So someone's going to need to be looking for pro bono legal services. So last week, for example, when Megan was facing a constructive eviction, her landlord was forcing her out in some way and she was needing to do the spoliation application. That is or can be a bit of a complicated application to do on one's own. So we often advise someone to try and get legal support if they can, and legal aid would be one of the avenues that she'd go to. Alternatively, if she was at the stage of maybe getting a notice of motion and actually entering those court proceedings for a formal legal eviction, she would also probably try and approach legal aid if she couldn't afford a private lawyer.
So then let's go to our other female guest that we also have in studio. And of course, I mentioned that we do have from Legal Aid, we have Charlotte Makua, who also joins us. Charlotte, thanks so much for your time and thanks so much for being here. Absolute pleasure. Now, Charlotte, in terms of the process or the procedure that follows when one does need a legal representation and I find myself at Legal Aid, what exactly is the process I need to follow?
What I can say is one would have to approach our offices, the nearest office. South Africa, Legal Aid South Africa is throughout the Republic of South Africa. Now, the best would be to approach our offices, and when they do approach our offices, they would be required to undergo a means test.
Okay.
Now, a means test is to see if one qualifies for legal aid. One qualifies for legal aid. Now, we do have our means test criteria, and with regards to our means test criteria, we have to look first at the gross monthly income of a person. Now, for a single person, one would have to be earning within a region of 7,700 rand, and for a married couple, we are looking at 8,400 rand. That is the gross income. And then with regards to the assets that a person has, right, for a movable property where a person has a fixed property and they reside in that house, they would have to be looking at 665,800 rand to qualify for legal aid. And where there's no fixed property, the means test is that a person would have to have 141,900 rand to qualify for legal aid. Now, one would come to the office, we would assess the income, which is the income and the assets. Further to that, we will assess the merits of the matter.
Okay, so when we look at the merits, what are we looking at here?
It will depend on the type of matter that you have. In an eviction matter, you would come through, then you would speak to our paralegal, who would then refer you to an attorney, then you would discuss exactly what the problem is. So whether it's an eviction matter, it's a family matter, depending on the sort of situation that a person finds themselves in, then we would have to go through the matter, listen to what the problem is, and then assess the merits. Yes.
We also have in studio with from Legal Aid, we have Babalu Jiza and Tulani Mgwenya. Now I'm going to start with Babalu. In terms of the merits of a case, what would not qualify, or what are the merits that will not be considered then?
Okay, just to be clear, I think insofar as eviction matters are concerned, probably those people who are opposing the application, best thing to look at this, because in terms of Section 1 of what is commonly known as the PI Act, Section 4.1 of the PI Act, there isn't any open or closed list as to what valid defenses are. It merely refers to a party having a valid defense. So probably the best hint I could give someone is that if someone has a dispute insofar as ownership or lawful control is concerned. So if you're disputing that a particular landlord is not the owner of the immovable property, or the party that is the applicant to the proceedings and that is trying to evict you from the premises is not in lawful control, then you possibly have a defense. So it's not an open or closed list. We assess the merits on a case-to-case basis. But if you do have something that could directly challenge either ownership or lawful control, then you possibly have a defense. Also, it's not very clear. A lot of people will not know what lawful control is. If I can just give an example. So, for example, someone who's an executor to an estate late would be someone who's in lawful control, or someone who has a special power of attorney or power of attorney over immovable property is someone that could be deemed to be in lawful control. So if you're directly challenging those two things, ownership or lawful control, then you possibly have a defense.
You are listening to Radio 786 on 100.4 FM. If you have just joined us, a very warm welcome. It is On the Couch with me, Zainab Bean, and I do have quite a few people in studio with me today. We are looking this week in our weekly advice assembly at what is legal aid, who can secure legal representation, and legal aid functions. I have Kyla Hazel from Ndifuna Ukwazi, Charlotte Makua, as well as Babalu Jiza, as well as Tulani Mgwenya. And if you have any questions pertaining to the purpose and the functions of legal aid, then please do not hesitate to give us a call or WhatsApp your comments or questions to 0786 10 11 12. Actually, one of the questions that just came through is asking, what other cases do you deal with as legal aid? Maybe I can leave that to Mr. Mgwenya.
All right. Legal aid is a law firm which deals with firstly criminal matters, but also does civil matters. We've got the regulations which governs the internal processes at legal aid. There are certain matters which legal aid attends to, including evictions, spoliations, applications, divorce matters from institution divorces, and also defending the matters. Also maintenance. applications. We also assist clients who have instituted maintenance cases. We also do labor matters, including domestic violence, harassment, issues pertaining to administration of deceased estate, and including matters where we are dealt with at the Equality Court. Yeah.
Now, here's one listener that says that it's quite difficult to get in touch with people at Legal Aid. May I want to comment? Maybe Ms. Makua?
Anybody that is struggling to get through to the office, what I can advise is, if possible, go to your nearest Legal Aid office. Then they would redirect you to the relevant office. Say for instance, you are in Joburg and you have a matter in Cape Town.
Okay.
You can go to the Joburg office. They'll make contact with the Cape Town office. Alternatively, we do have an advice line as well. And the number I can share, it's 0800 110 110. It's a toll-free line. But the best would be, if possible, get to the nearest office and we will be able to assist.
Can you repeat that number?
0800 11 11 0.
Okay, got it. It's 0800 11 0 11 0 for those that would like to find out more, and I'm sure that you will be able to.
And if
to
I
get in
may
touch.
add just to that, I believe the question stems from the result of COVID-19.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, clients were at some point requested to make appointments to see a legal representative. But since the disaster management has been lifted, all offices are open now.
There you have it.
All the clients are available. They can approach the offices and then we'll take it from there.
And there you rest assured, 0800 110 110 if you wish to find out more, and that to one of the listeners that came through via 0786 10 11 12. Speak to us about some of the cases that you cannot get legal aid for.
We have a variety of matters, but like I've said, we'll have to go through the means test as well. Now, some of the matters that we do not cover relates to a financial inquiry in terms of Section 65 of the Magistrate Court, small claims court matters, because one can get assistance in the small claims court, administration of estates in terms of Section 64 of the Magistrate Court Act, voluntary surrender and sequestration of estates, liquidation of a legal person, application for rehabilitation of an unrehabilitated insolvent, debt review matters, and claiming an action claiming damages from defamation. Those matters we do not cover.
Okay. And then there's one more person that just tuned in. She says, how does this work? Must you sign up and pay a monthly fee, or are you charged per case?
Oh no. The first statement that we made was that we are for the indigent. All that you have to do is just to qualify. You come in, we do a merit assessment, and then once you qualify for it, you will get legal representative depending on the merits of the case. So there's no fee payable.
There you have it, listener. There is absolutely no fee that you need to pay. No monthly charge, nothing like that. It doesn't matter the case. All you do is contact the legal aid officers, and you can do so on 0800 110 110 for any further details. And thanks so much for that question. Okay, then just moving on, I want to get back to Megan's case, Taylor. And I think that Megan's case we've been running now for quite some time. And last week she was going a constructive eviction and all of those things. But like, what happens in this case where she's concerned? Is it something that legal aid is able to assist, and how would she then process things?
With the spoliation matter. So I think something that we do need to bring into the conversation, because it's very likely going to be what Megan confronts, is that so there's a limited amount of pro bono or free legal services available in the country. And so there are also capacity issues that come in. And then also the struggle, particularly when someone's doing a spoliation application, is often when it takes place. So a lot of these things happen sometimes in the middle of the night, at a time when it's not safe for somebody to take transport, perhaps to get to the relevant office, or where they're not able to do that maybe until the next day. And Megan might be concerned, that very night about where she's going to sleep. So it is something, I think, specifically with the spoliation. My understanding, and the colleagues can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that she could approach legal aid about a spoliation application if necessary, because it is a criminal act in terms of the PI Act if somebody is forced out of their home without a court order. But what might end up being in the case is, for example, if that does happen in the middle of the night, it's obviously going to be very difficult to reach.
But isn't a spoliation order something that is of a matter of urgency?
It is a matter of urgency. So what I would say to Megan, if she were in that situation and unable to get, for example, to a legal aid office, or maybe she fell just outside of the means test, etc., is what we've advised people sometimes is to actually try and get, maybe get shelter for that night, but as soon as possible, get directly to the magistrate's court and actually ask the clerk of the court if they could assist you with putting that application in. So sometimes perhaps she's gone to legal aid and she may even try other pro bono offices. But if she hasn't managed to secure a lawyer or she's not able to, she could go directly to the clerk of the court and ask for their help. And then it's also important to assert that this is an urgent matter, and there should be a magistrate who's on duty in order to deal with an urgent matter, whatever time it is, and the clerk would be able to make that contact.
Most certainly. Now, I'm sure that because your services is absolutely free, that there could possibly be maybe lots of caseloads. There may be so many cases that you need to deal with, but also capacity constraints. So how long would a person wait for legal assistance?
It would depend on a matter. What I can assure the listeners is that once a person walks into legal aid, they speak to a paralegal, depending on the matter that they have. If it's something that legal aid does not cover, you would get a referral on the very same day. If it is a matter that legal aid covers, that person would be referred to an attorney within 14 days.
14 days.
Yes. So at least they would have a date to say you will be meeting with Ms. Maku or you'll be meeting with Mr. Mgonya within. Yes.
Okay. Here's one more question asking, hi, thanks so much for your assistance. Can you please explain what it means? What are some of the cases that you do cover? Because I heard that you just explained what you don't cover, but what are the cases that you do cover?
I'm going to repeat that. I believe Mr. Mgonya already covered the cases that we do. To start with, we do criminal matters, that is providing advice and legal representation in criminal matters. Also in civil matters, we do provide legal advice and legal representation. But just to be specific, we cover labor matters, we cover maintenance matters, harassment matters, domestic violence matters, equality court matters, divorce and family law matters, children's court matters, administration of estate matters, land reform, eviction matters in terms of the PI, in terms of the ESTA. We assist asylum seekers and also matters including children. Yes.
Just one more person that maybe missed the previous comment.
Yes.
Asking what is pro bono and is legal aid a free service? Yes, it is a free service, and if you'd like more details, you're more than welcome to contact them on 0800 110 110 for more details. Anything you'd like to add to that comment of the listener?
The best would be approach the office.
Okay.
And then get directive there.
So go to your nearest legal aid for any assistance, but the number we will provide you with at the end of the discussion. Just a reminder that we are talking about what is legal aid, who can secure legal representation, and also the functions of legal aid. And I do have in studio with me Kayla Hazel from Ndifuna Ukwazi, Charlotte Makua, who you just heard, as well as Babala Jiza and Tulani Magwinya, who also joins us. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send it to 0786 10 11 12 or 021 699 1786. Now, concerns and possible strategies that legal aid has thought about to address ongoing eviction cases. Example, more government support, or maybe more support from bodies like the police, etc. Can you maybe just enlighten us on that?
We are in relation and forming relations with different organizations.
Okay.
The closest that a person would be in most instances would be advice officers. We do have advice officers in our communities. We can approach that. We do have ward councillors in our communities. We can approach those people. The police can also be approached. The city of Cape Town is also assisting us with the matters. The Department of Agriculture, Human Settlement, all those departments. One thing that I know for a fact is that even if that particular department cannot assist with a matter, they will redirect you to the correct department. So even if you go there, they say we don't do this. At the end of the day, they will say, please approach this office at this particular address for assistance.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. And then in terms of Ndifuna Ukwazi, how can one secure legal representation from your law centre?
So broadly, it's quite similar with the different pro bono firms. And pro bono is just a way of saying free. So it just means free service. I'm not quite sure where the origin of that term is. I'm guessing Latin, and it's stuck. But for Ndifuna Ukwazi, we similarly have a means test. So our bar is set at 7.4 currently for an individual. So if that individual is earning less than 7,400 Rand a month, or if perhaps they're unemployed or relying on grants for their main income. And then if they're a household, if they live with others and there may be a couple of different streams of income, our bar, which I think was the same as yours there, is then 8,000 a month for that income bracket. So that's the biggest thing, is the means test to check. And also relevant there, like my colleague mentioned, is that the assets that the person or the household owns are also taken into account. So there is that standard for us. And then the biggest thing for us is also sometimes a capacity issue. So if somebody is facing an eviction matter, they have received papers, we will try as far as possible to assist. If they haven't yet received court papers, we'll try to provide legal advice for that person, or sometimes it's paralegal advice or political advice for that person to connect with community members and other people who can support them, or to try and resolve this issue maybe outside of the courts. So we've mentioned before the Rental Housing Tribunal as an excellent body. But sometimes for us there is a capacity concern, so it will depend on whether our lawyers are able to take that case at that point in time. But we also will always provide a referral if it's not a case that we directly can take on. And then just to say, of course, Legal Aid has this very broad mandate of cases that they have to look at, whereas Ndifuna Ukwazi is very directly focused on the housing and eviction questions.
And in terms of the merits of the case, how do you navigate around those things?
So something for us that we look at, so I think that we were speaking about how there are certain things that need to be proved in an eviction case. So the landlord has to show that they're the owner, that they have to show that it's fair in the situation for you to be evicted, that your continued occupation of that space is in some way to their detriment. And as Ndifuna Ukwazi, we tend to find ourselves on the side of the tenant. And one of the big things that we will also look at arguing as a defence is whether this eviction is just and equitable. So that's something that we believe the magistrate is going to need to look at. And so we will try and represent the full life circumstances of that client, and to say in what way this is going to affect them. Because we know that we're sitting with an affordable housing crisis in the city. We know that people are facing eviction that results sometimes in homelessness, more often in displacement. We know what that means politically, and given the history of our city and the knock-on effects it has for the socioeconomic standing of that family. And so part of what we're trying to look at is, how do we tackle these ongoing evictions because of what they mean in terms of spatial segregation in the city. So we will also try and look at that. For example, if someone has an elderly person in their family, or if there are children who are in school in the area, or a child perhaps who needs medication at the local clinic, those are all factors that are considered. Yeah.
But then just one of the other things, you mentioned that you find yourself very often on the side of the tenant. But do you sometimes represent a landlord?
As far as I'm aware, we haven't represented a landlord. That's, as far as I'm aware, I'm not sure if there's anything on paper about not doing that.
Okay, just a question.
But we do advise, so that is one thing. In our advice assembly, we've got the in-person one at the moment. We do have landlords who are with us there, and we definitely can provide advice and try to seek ways that you can kind of mediate solutions.
So just a reminder to those who would like to find out more, and if you do find yourself at a stage where you need legal representation, information. You may also contact Ndifuna Ukwazi's Housing Clinic on 062 352 9372. That number again is 062 352 9372. You also can email ntombi@nu.org.za for further details. Now, I just want to come back to some of the WhatsApp questions that we are receiving. One of it says that if you're a single mom with 2 kids and just above the threshold, would this be an issue to qualify?
What a person needs to do, we do have our own internal processes, as Mr. Mgonya did say. One is welcome to appeal to our provincial office and to our national office. So they would have to come with their income and say, my expenses are, my liabilities are, and my dependents are. Then from there we will be able to assess the matter and take it from there. So it's not a shut door case. You don't end this much, then go away. No, we don't do that.
Okay. And just another question. Do you also assist people with buying house properties?
Ndifuna Ukwazi.
Yeah.
No, but there is, depending on what kind of property you're looking to buy, there is a great organization called the Transaction Support Center that you could try and contact. So I'll say the name again, the Transaction Support Center. And if you pop that into Google, you'll get a contact. And they have been assisting people with especially those who are navigating maybe for the first time. Perhaps they're trying to buy a FLIS property, for example. They can assist with that.
And there you have it. I feel that we have Mr. Jiza and also Mgwenya very quietly sitting here in studio. And I also want to rope in very quickly. But do encourage you to still continue sending your questions to 0786 10 11 12. What happens if you are unable to secure legal representation? How will this jeopardize a particular case?
Like my colleague said, there's a second leg in terms of the PI Act. Section 4.2 of the PI Act will refer to a just and equitable test. So she mentioned just and equitable. So if you can't secure legal representation and you're forced to appear in person, there are certain personal circumstances for each party that appears in court that party has to place before the court, for the court to take into account all the relevant facts to that particular application and make a ruling that is just and equitable. So you're not dead in the water if you can't secure legal representation. The court is there as an interested party that is supposed to take into account all the facts that particular respondent is facing before the court, and must in terms of the legislation make an order that is just and equitable in the circumstances. So it's not a must that each and every party that is faced with an eviction matter must be legally represented.
Yeah.
You want to add?
Some things that we've spoken about on the show in the past for somebody if they did find themselves in that situation is that it's really important to always appear in court if you're opposing that eviction, because you can get what's called a default judgment against you if you don't turn up. The court may read that as you not defending it. And then when you're there, it's important to let the clerk of the court, if you meet them before, know that you're self-representing, or the magistrate. And also remember that you have basic rights to understand the proceedings. If you need to ask for a translator, if you need to ask the magistrate or judge to slow down or explain something to you, if you need to ask for time to think about something, really do try and treat that court space as your own, as intimidating as it can be. You do have a right to stand there. You do have a right to share your story verbally if you haven't been able to get a lawyer.
But I'm just imagining how, if you need to represent yourself, how now that would kind of be very...
It's scary.
Yes, yes. But are they, is it really just a law that you can depend on, or are there other bodies or representatives that you can maybe approach for legal advice?
I can maybe jump in as a beginning on that, and then my colleagues from Legal Aid, if you'd like to add as well. So I think we mentioned the Rental Housing Tribunal, which is a really important body, and they are an alternative path to the court where a matter will be mediated, but where you'll still get a decision out of that is binding on your landlord. So somebody could approach the Rental Housing Tribunal to try and deal with something. So for example, Megan in her situation of a constructive eviction, that would be a really good idea. And then I'd also really encourage people to connect with our advice assembly space that is happening in person at Bertha House, because there you can connect with other community members and housing activists who have experience, and perhaps one of them can at least help to walk with you through this process.
Here's a question that says, why do you not have an office in Somerset West? Okay, but before you go to that, before you,
I think that's a higher up national question, maybe.
but maybe something we can definitely take into consideration. Because we are running tight on time, we have about 2 minutes left. I'm going to take the last two questions and make it into one. So when you do go to court, who are you recommending should be going with you to court? And then also, what is the likelihood of the outcome? Just very, very brief and very quickly.
Okay, I'm going to start by answering the Somerset question. Please call the toll-free line and they'll get you in touch with the nearest office for Legal Aid South Africa. And the second question being, who do you take with to court? A person that you know you can rely on and a person that can guide you. In some instances, we might be dependent on our spouses. If you feel comfortable to go with that person, then go with that person. In some instances, we don't have anybody close by to rely on. If you have a legal representative, you can go with your attorney to court.
And then, in terms of the outcome, what would be the outcome? I think it's important that sometimes we must realize that eviction can still happen despite.
Let me cover this part. My colleagues have spoken about the just and equitable. Now, where the court would say you are evicted from the premises, and we find that we cannot afford to get alternative accommodation. I cannot pay a rental because I do not have the means to afford. The city of Cape Town, basically the municipality, is assisting in that instance by providing emergency accommodation.
Okay.
Thus, the whole just and equitable has to be done so that we can see if one needs emergency accommodation.
And I think on that note, we will have to conclude. If there's anything else that you'd maybe like to add to that, I'd like to just thank Kayla Hazel from Ndifuna Ukwazi, but of course also Mr. Jiza as well as Mr. Mgwenya, and also to Charlotte Makua from Legal Aid. Thanks so much for speaking to us and for all the advice that you just gave us. Also just a reminder that to those that would like to find out a bit more, you're more than welcome to give them a call. The toll-free number is 0800110110, and I will leave those details at reception for those who'd like to find out more. And if you are interested and find yourself in a position of needing other legal representation, you may also contact the Ndifuna Ukwazi Housing Clinic on 062 352 9372. And I know there's quite a few people who's asked for this number. If I do not respond to that WhatsApp, so I will leave it at the reception. And then lastly, just a reminder that the weekly advice assembly, the 10-week program is still in process, and it started on the 18th of May. It happens every week on a Wednesday between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. at Bertha House at 6769 Main Road in Mowbray. You can also contact the number 065 993 1324 for further details, and of course learn all about the law that governs evictions. And this is also absolutely free, so please do make your way there. It's Bertha House, 6769 Main Road in Mowbray. And that's how we conclude this week's edition of Advice Assembly. It's always lovely keeping you company. Until the next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.